My name is Reverend Dean Brown. I'm the pastor of Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in Red Bank, New Jersey.
The general question is, how important is the church for people in the U.S.? Maybe also like as a meeting place or something like that.
How important is the church in general in the U.S.? One thing about the U.S., I believe anyways, is that it's very diverse, very pluralistic. I think all answers have to be balanced and filtered somewhat. I know from the Pew survey research that, as you have more people saying they're agnostic and atheist, I don't think the church continues to play kind of the same role now that maybe it did, let's say, in the 80s or even in the turn of this past millennia. Yet the church is always important. I'm going to bounce back and forth sometimes because I draw on information from lots of different sources, meaning sometimes I think about modern scholarship and then other times I revert to being a theologian. And as a theologian, I would say that the church always matters. The church can be small and yet it can always be powerful. A lot of people would say that the church was most powerful before it was aligned with Constantine and so forth. So when Constantine made it legal, so to speak, some people would say that it almost hurt the church. So the church is still very important. I think sometimes the church or faith is viewed today as a monolith. You hear about the evangelical vote, and that gets treated more like this large block, and in some ways it is a block. As a person of faith, though, I believe there's texture within that block of people, and certainly when you talk about Christianity, there is a lot of diversity and variety of opinions and thoughts according to the denominations and different expressions of Christianity.
Yeah. How important is it, like here in this community? Like how important is it to people come here every Sunday or worship?
Yeah. So very important. So important that people willingly, make contributions to the church. Very high amounts. Let's see here. This conversation we're having may be shared in a different part of the world and so forth. Churches in the U.S. are completely funded by people's free will offerings and so forth. So people love the church so much that they give willingly. I mean, we encourage that annually and so forth. People help run the church. It's not just a pastor, for example, me or the secretary. Those are important people, or the musician, but there's lots of volunteers. So it's very important. I think it's important to people for a lot of reasons. And again, every church is a little different. This particular congregation, I think it serves as like a second family. And there's some good things about that. And then as a pastoral leader, there can be challenges with that too. But the church helps people hold their lives together in just a variety of ways. And so it matters a whole lot to people. Another thing, though, is that oftentimes people think that it will just always automatically be there, and they kind of want that. They want to know there's something steady and sure overall in their life. Whether they are real involved, active participants, or just kind of dip in now and again.
As a pastor, you might have a different, or different view
Sure.
about some of the remarks from Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. What do you say about that?
Yeah. Well, they're very disturbing. And it seems that as the country's gotten closer to a general election, that those views have been made more aware. And therefore, I think some would perceive them as distortions of who he really is, for example. I became very concerned about that tone going back to the fall of last year when I had heard of some very good research being done. Actually, first just listening and hearing what I would call scapegoating of a particular cross-section of people and painting them with just a broad brush. See here. As a pastor, I've been trained to run my thoughts through a whole lot of different filters, okay? So again, you asked about Christianity before. It's not like I simply open the Bible and then there's a biblical verse and then what the verse says is what it means. And I am just all too aware of human history numerous times. You can look at it that way, or then just a person who's interested in social psychology about those ways that people can unconsciously make themselves feel safe or good by projecting their fears and concerns on some other out there. So it's very disconcerting to me, and I spend some time even wondering what's going on within, I'll call it the soul of this country. And I don't think it's unique only to this country, but as an American citizen, I think what's going on within the soul of this country, that even if there are some incidences, Donald Trump has made claims, or there are incidences of an immigrant injuring an American citizen, that it is so unusual, and yet to speak as if that's this country's primary problem. My concern is not only that he says that on the one hand, but what is going on within our country that resonates with so many people. And then I have to say this too. I don't say that, I'm going to get a little emotional right now. I don't say that as a moralist, okay? I say that as a pastor because, the reason I do what I do is to help people, feel well in their soul. And to me, that's a sign that people aren't well in themselves. So even when there's this ugliness, is what I would call it, I know from psychology and then to theology as well, that there's some real pain back there, and the pain is coming out in ways that, in my opinion, won't make things better for anyone. So it's as a pastor, from a pastoral perspective, it is a very troubling thing to observe and I guess in some ways be a part of, just because I am part of this country. Yeah.
Some of the past presidents or candidates use their religion to promote themselves.
Oh yeah,
also.
Sure.
How do you see this? Maybe also if you have read about different other countries, like in Germany, you won't find as much as religion in the election campaign or something, or and the motivation of politicians.
Right.
Only like in a few.
Yeah.
So what is your perspective on this?
Yeah.
Maybe the goods and the bads.
Well, first the why, I'm out of seminary now 14 years, but I can remember going all the way back to graduate school and studying with some great sociologists of religion. For example, a guy named Dr. Wade Clark Ruth. He used to be at University of Massachusetts Amherst. He was then teaching at University of California, Santa Barbara. That is like a sociological question. How has religion remained so commonplace in America in contrast to other countries? And there's probably lots of answers. And even now, you know, I follow Pew Research, as I was saying before, that shows that you have, you know, one of the fastest growing cross sections are people who identify themselves as agnostic and atheist. And yet, this country still very much confesses or professes a sense of awe and transcendence, and is still very religious, right? So I think that's one reason, and I think I heard some other research that said that it would be a deficit at this point. Anything can change, right? But at this point, it would be a deficit almost to somebody to run for president and not have, and I would have to say most likely, a Christian faith. I'm not saying those are my values. I'm saying I think that that's some of the research I read. So it's no surprise they would do it, since it would kind of grab so many people. What are some of the deficits? Well, where do you begin answering that question? You know, I mean, makes my job hard. I do believe that our faith shapes our life, not just on Sunday mornings, but every moment. Also doesn't mean we're saints or perfect at all. And therefore, it should shape our public choices. I do think it's a real art to know how to do that. And in this country, you know, you have some, I'll just say Christians, you know, who just think that faith makes all their public choices very clear. That's kind of one expression. But there's a whole lot of us who say, yes, faith shapes our choices, but we cannot simply legislate our faith. I think it was a previous Cuomo who said a long time ago something like, what is it? You know, I'm a governor who's Catholic. I'm not a Catholic governor. And I might have that quote wrong. That's why I'm a little nervous it's on tape. But for me, I always liked that distinction, because it meant that there is a connection between these two terribly important things. But I don't know how else to put it. There's some filters you go through before you put your faith into public practice. So, you know, it makes it hard. And then it also makes it hard that sometimes people can take offense at, you know, beautiful, lovely things that are said here. I also think it's troubling too that it maybe in some instances accounts for people leaving faith, because they see how it's treated like a commercial enterprise, a way of grabbing votes. People question the sincerity. They observe the human hypocrisy, and then they go, you know, religion is supposed to be this ultimate thing that makes people pure and perfect, and yet look at this hypocrite. Of course, that's not how I view my faith or anything like that, but people go. So I think it actually is one of the things that pushes people away from faith, and I wish that wasn't so, but I get that.
So my last topic, how do you see the different positions or different supporters, political supporters in your church? Is it easy to handle both prior to the election or in general?
Let's see. Could you repeat the question one more time?
How do you see the different positions or like political supporters in your church? So the people in your church who have different positions. Is it easy to handle both? Like both positions, like prior to this election?
Let's see here. Well, you started the question with how do I see them, and I would answer, I do see that. That is one of the unique challenges and kind of paradoxes sometimes, that politically, and let's say that this is a very politically divisive time, we have people on both sides, so to speak, And so it's kind of, maybe this is a gift, even though it's not easy, that there can be a kind of division, and yet there can be a place of a common meeting where people do these incredibly wonderful things, like help people overcome or recover from Hurricane Sandy, which this area is still recovering from, and so forth. So there's both political types here, and I don't know if this is exactly your question, so we can kind of circle around again if you want, but that two different political viewpoints are in this one place. It absolutely affects the community. I would say it affects the community at a more subterranean level, you know. Overall, and there are exceptions, people tend to be respectful or realize that, you know, it's not really, this isn't a place for one group of people to change the minds of another group of people. However, what does end up happening is inevitably people within the single community know that some view one candidate as their candidate and another candidate as their candidate, and so they might kind of say some friendly remarks to one another about that, kind of get in their own little clique momentarily and so forth. Sometimes there might be some jokes that are shared where a person of one political party tells a joke, and the interesting thing is it will be about the other party, not about their own party. My opinion, for humor to really be humor, you have to be able to laugh at all, you know. And so is that humor actually kind of a way of venting or leaking a person's opinions or something like that, and yet doing it in a way that's not utterly destructive or obvious or harmful? I'll throw this out there too, that for some time, let's see here, I came here as pastor in 2002, so 2004, 2008, 2012, this will be my fourth election cycle. And I didn't know it as a new pastor, but now for sure when a presidential election season is coming, that is a time that I almost kind of prepare myself I don't know how else to describe it. I prepare myself to kind of understand that people are emotionally worked up. They are very distraught or frenzied, or their strongly held beliefs are being very thinly held on to. And so to, on the one hand, kind of talk to people about God in a way that, that helps them make some decisions and choices, but at the same time, to help them not be so fearful, to think lucidly about just their life and so forth. It's a hard time, and maybe I should just say this, it's stressful for me. It's very, very stressful. And it's not obvious, it's not on the surface, it's beneath the surface. But because of the kind of job I do, I am very in tune with, or on the receiving end of what's beneath the surface. So people can be on the surface polite with one another, but their anxieties, their fears, their sadness, their disappointment, their hurt, that comes to me. and it's hard to kind of walk that tightrope.
So at the end, I want your forecast for the election.
Oh, sure. Like who do I think is going to win the election?
And why? And
yeah, well, I mean, I think that Hillary Clinton is going to win, and gee whiz. You know what's frustrating about the question, if I can just critique it a little bit? No, this is you know, we get to this point of the campaign where you almost wonder if you're repeating words as a robot because you've heard certain words said over and over and over again. You know, you like to think of yourself as a smart person, but then it gets to that time of, you know, have I just bought a product, if you will. All that said, I think Hillary Clinton is going to win. And maybe here's a way I could answer the question without, you know, repeating a line here, something like that. But because she has tapped into the diversity and pluralism that does exist in this country, that is unique. For the longest time, sociologists have said, you know, that we are a diverse and pluralistic society, and there have been different times in the history of this country when we've really grappled with that. You know, when Kennedy was the first Roman Catholic president, that was a departure from, you know, a Protestant presidency and so forth. Well, you know, maybe this is another watershed moment, and I think because Hillary Clinton has been invested in these many different cross sections of the U.S. population, that may be why. One of the principal reasons why. I think there's a lot more that could be said of that, but that's one of the reasons, and I'll leave it to the rest of the panel you interview to fill that out a little bit more. So yeah.